Coming up, how have the Nets graded out this offseason with their draft, trades, and other moves? I'll dive into that after this.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's show, I'm going to be joined by a familiar face for all you Locked On Nets listeners to get his reaction to the Nets draft, trades, summer league, and more before offering some predictions for next season. And we have a very special guest on today's episode of Locked On Nets, rejoining the show, longtime host Adam Armbrecht. Adam, how are you, man? I'm sure all the listeners are happy to see that face behind the camera again.
Well, as you can tell, Eric, I've been working on my tan. The complexion is coming through beautifully. Yeah, man, it's been a great vibe. Stepping away, obviously, was difficult. Everybody that follows the show and has continued, obviously, we hope to have supported you as you took it over, was really difficult. And then there's like a bit of relief to it. I got to be honest with you, because Nets Twitter and the Nets fan base, the battles continue on regardless of where the team is headed. And it was nice to kind of be able to just look at it from a distance and say, hey, enjoy the chaos, Eric. You're at the helm now.
Yeah, you step away for a little bit and then you come back and you got the tan, you got the beach shirt on. It's like an extended vacation / retirement for Armbrecht over here. So yeah, like what has it been like? I mean, I think everybody knows the volume of shows that you guys put out and that I'm continuing to do now. It's a lot more than other podcasts. It's a lot of work. It is a big part of your life while you're doing it. So you've stepped away, and what has it been like having a little bit more free time there?
It's funny, man, because obviously there's the other side of, other work life, and that stuff goes on. But when you start to see, especially summer league, and we're going to talk about, big draft, obviously, for the Brooklyn Nets. And we didn't get that opportunity over the course of our time covering the team for that to be something that was going on with them. So it's funny to not have to plug in right after that thing happens, right after the breaking news, right after the draft picks. And then at the same time, as people knew from watching us on the show, like I grew up following this team when they were in New Jersey. So there's still, now it's like reconnecting with the pure fandom where I get to just be like, oh man, that looks like a great pick. Or I hope he does well, and maybe not having to always turn on the analytical brain, right? And start critiquing these 19-year-old kids as they start their process. So I've enjoyed the relief of it. Like I've enjoyed not having to 5 days a week, and it was a blessing. And as I'm sure you know, right, it's a great gig to have. You connect with amazing people. You get to talk to all these athletes, and also you got to be on it. You got to be on it 5 days a week, and sometimes a Saturday, maybe a Sunday afternoon, right? So being able to get off of that schedule is the exact reason why Doug and I think stepped away ultimately. And then there's all the other aspects of life that nobody cares about. Like, the personal side of life has evolved in a great way for me. So that's been fun too. And that's why you make space for these things and make space for someone like you to take it over.
When you've seen all this stuff happening, the draft, them making 5 first-round picks, covering, there's some stuff happening that, as you noted, you guys didn't get to do. Did you find yourself having any urge to insert takes or, be getting behind the microphone again and fire off your thoughts?
So if anybody followed the show, they always knew when it came to draft, I was a big fan. We should mock this thing out 1,000 times. And Doug had a hard time wrapping his head around theoreticals and, what could be, or doing mock trades and like that. So when this draft came around, I mean, I did. And I was on Twitter and I was into it, and I was having those conversations about who they were taking. And again, pushing back against some of the instant reaction that the fan base was having, but 100%, man. Like the draft is approaching, and I am just itching about what is it going to look like? Like, who are they going to take? And then going, yeah, like turn on the mic, talk to somebody. I mean, it can end up being just me and Doug sending text messages back and forth over the course of it. He, by the way, who was in Europe at the time and was still awake and still tracking it a little bit, right? Because it's hard to fully detach from it. So 100% that itch came back around. No shameless ploys here, but I reignited a little We Got Nets Substack and said, hey, don't look for me 5 days a week. Don't look for me 3 days a week. But sometimes when the urge strikes, here's a place that I can still kind of, get that out to people and get that response, I think, which has been really cool, as I'm sure you've seen joining Locked On. The Nets community is awesome. The fan base is incredible. I know people knock it for, it's not as big, little brother of New York City. The fans that are dedicated to the Brooklyn Nets are as dedicated or more than any fan base in the NBA. So they were excited to hear from me a little bit. I was excited to stay connected. And again, also excited to go, I'll let Erik take the flight out to Vegas for Summer League. I'll let Erik go ahead and do those lists around those things when I'm sure you had a lot of late nights, especially around the draft.
Definitely some late nights in Vegas, and not the kind of late nights in Vegas that you're expecting when you go to Vegas. It's more writing outlines, sitting in my hotel room, figuring out lighting and camera positioning and stuff kind of late night. So, but it was
These
fun.
aren't everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I can tell you exactly what happened. I was doing article writing and tracking draft picks. There wasn't,
and I wouldn't have it any other way. But we're going to get into the draft and all that stuff and your thoughts on that. But, with you having all this free time, like any hobbies, anything you're picking up now that you got a little bit more time to yourself?
I've gotten big into the Hawaiian shirt game, as you can tell. I mean, I think that's a part of it. Summertime vibes purely. No, I hate to say it too. I mean, like I'm 39, like I'll be 40 coming up in November. So it's not like, covering the NBA was not curtailing my, extravagant nightlife or something. But mostly, man, summer season, especially, I've been just getting outdoors more, like late into the evenings. Again, man, I don't know how this comes across. I was playing bocce last night, baby. I was playing some bocce in my local town with a few buddies, sun setting, good vibes, music in the background. So yeah, it's really just that, dude. The relief of in the evenings, just sitting out back in the yard, like, letting the sun set, not worrying about having to hop into something. And then total hippie vibes. I love disc golf. And now I'm back into that too, man. I listen. I'm a guy in flip-flops bumming around the beach. That's essentially what I've turned into here. And it happened very quickly. I got to be honest. You put down the mic and instantly I go right back into some old vibes that I've been loving.
Quick transition. Armbrecht's got the Hawaiian shirt on. He's playing bocce. He's letting Nets fans, kill each other in the Twitterverse while he's just kicking back and chilling during the summer here. But he still had some thoughts, obviously, on the Nets offseason. He covered the draft stuff all the way right up until before it. So I'm sure you have a lot to say, a lot of things that you got to get out of you. So we'll get all those takes from Adam and more on the Nets offseason after a quick break. But before that, got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. Guys, have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with family or friends? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where GameTime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. GameTime makes it possible. GameTime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Guys, GameTime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. You tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? GameTime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you, and the seat views in the app right before you buy. You have them, so you'll know exactly where you'll be. Guys, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDNBA for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets episode with former Locked On Nets host Adam Armbrecht. And Adam, I know that you have a lot of draft thoughts because this was something that you did not get to really cover at all during your time or to this magnitude. And you guys were on it as I was in my writing and my podcasting prior at Believe. But right up into the draft, you guys were looking at prospects. You were doing all of these things. They did the Locked On Nets mock draft. Adam did that because it was before I took over. Little backstory for all you guys. I'm sure some of you saw the mock draft. Adam made 5 first-round picks. They had the 4. He traded for an extra one. And mind you, this was before any like Drake Powell, Nets Hawks trades. And I had to answer for that because I came in after. So it was kind of a transition where I was still there. And I looked at it and I had to send Adam a message and say, Adam, they have 4 first-round picks. You had to trade for another one, and I have to answer for a 5th first-round pick? I was like, I don't see that really happening. Oh, no, you actually made 6 first-round picks.
I did, yeah. There is a world where you can't expose the fact a little bit that there was some chaos, right? I had a strategy going into the draft. It didn't involve having all 6 of those. I did want to condense, but inevitably, as people start to think that you're losing your mind, they stay away from making deals with you. So it was hard on the back end to condense some of those down as I had hoped to.
And I will say that the trades that you made in the mock draft were high-level trades. I agreed with all the moves. I said, hey, 6 first-round picks. I don't know. I like the rest of the NBA community. I thought they were going to consolidate. So they called you a madman, myself included. But little did we know that Adam was just pulling the strings of the Nets front office behind the scenes, and he was controlling everything. So when you see the Nets make 5 first-round picks, just let's start with the volume of it. What were your immediate thoughts with the strategy of them making all those picks and not consolidating, moving up as people thought they were going to?
Yeah, I mean, going into the draft, we said it was hard to think that you're going to see a lot of that condensing movement. And there were some scenarios we saw play out on draft night that let you know what the price point maybe was going to be to do some of those things. And when it's a deep draft class, it becomes harder to convince another team that the value isn't right there. Now, some would say, yeah, you move back and you still get value in the teens or going towards the 20. So you can make that case. But when you also look specifically at the teams and where they were drafting, you know, the Spurs had picks in certain spots where you say, yeah, but they still want to add to their core around Wemby, right? I'm trying to remember who was it. One team made the big trade up that ended up being kind of a head scratcher because of what it cost you, giving up a future first round pick to come up the board to get a guy that you like and you have a conviction about. That's great. But
yeah, New Orleans. New Orleans
gave
up their unprotected. That showed you what the price was to move up from 23 to 13, I think it was. They gave up an unprotected first round pick in 2026, and that a lot of people called that crazy.
Right. So, and in that instance, you go again, you're going to judge the franchise. It's not like New Orleans has been this incredibly well-run organization over the last handful of years, right? A lot of swings and misses. You go all the way back to the Anthony Davis era of them. And, you know, so you look at that and you say, yeah, okay, maybe you're a team that feels like you're desperate and you need to go accomplish something here to convince the fan base this is going the right direction, or to make sure you get the value out of what your current roster has. So in the Nets case, I know everyone said, and this was happening inside of our mock draft, there's no way there's not enough roster space. Yes, there is. Like the Brooklyn Nets have nothing but roster space. So we were convinced, Doug and myself, that they were going to take that big swing. They were going to go for the high upside, yes, risk reward, and try to do that as often as possible. So when you look at their draft picks and the age of everybody, 19 years old, right? And I know we can talk about Summer League, like that's what it was going to be. The Igor Deming case, listen, you're talking about a guy that at one point was considered to be around that top 10. Yes, he did fall. Nets had a conviction about him. Okay. Nolan Traore, right in that same kind of wheelhouse, right? The Drake Powell one, there was a little bit of buzz building up more around his name, certainly for the Brooklyn Nets. And then when you get to the back end of it, listen, we'll talk in totality, what I think about the collection of players from a strategy standpoint. But then you end up getting a couple of guys that you think have value. Danny Wolf, I was higher at one point, waned a little bit, and maybe Summer League has informed that in a unique way. But I just think that the Nets, to be long-winded, I haven't been on a microphone in a long time. The Nets, like the fan base for the most part, initial reaction was, how could you take all these guys and, you know, what are we doing? It's supposed to be. There was this instant, I think, difficult of acceptance that, yes, they are rebuilding. And I think you've put out content around this of, this is like the real year one of the rebuild. Whether or not you think it's been rebuilding, this is the true year one. So you have to think about this collection of players and saying, we have this full season and maybe even next season to develop and evaluate them and see where these next draft classes go. So I like the strategy. I can get why it's frustrating, but I understood it from that standpoint from the Brooklyn Nets front office.
Yeah, and I think part of the frustration was stemming from the Nets just not being in the draft position that people hoped them to be, with, you know, falling to the 8th pick in the lottery, obviously. So
once you get the buzz, oh, maybe the Nets are going to trade up, right? And you start hearing about top 3, they're going to get in there. That was a big problem too, right? Once that narrative starts to build, well, now as a fan base, you're like, well, come on. I thought we were condensing, getting a top 5 pick still, right? That really shifted things, I think, too, as the draft kind of unfolded, and that's just sat in their spots and made their picks.
Yeah, and it wasn't for a lack of trying. Like I reported in the days leading up to the draft that they had conversations with Philly, they had conversations with San Antonio, which was never going to happen. They also talked with Charlotte at 4, and those teams were talking with a lot of other teams, and nobody moved up. And the reason for that being the price was obviously high, and really the only the significant trade up that we saw was a trade that a lot of people called, batshit crazy. So it's like, what were you expecting them to do? And it wasn't really, for me, the concept of making 4 first-round picks. They end up making 5. Wasn't really a matter of roster space, because in terms of young, high upside guys, the Nets they're kind of devout. They barely have any. Like, I'm not really putting Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton in that bucket anymore. Like, they're kind of in the middle of their NBA career. So it wasn't a matter of roster space. It is a challenging thing to try to develop, 4 guys in the same class, let alone 5. But Jordi Fernandez has projected confidence that he's going to be able to do it, and he's going to be able to get them minutes. And he said that he's probably going to go 10 deep in the rotation. The Nets have also used Long Island, as a development place for a lot of guys who have turned into, looks like rotation level NBA players. So we'll see. But getting into the draft class a little deeper, starting at the top at 8, I'm pretty sure you had Noah Asenge in the mock draft there. I think he was a guy people were talking about. The way the board shook out, Kaman Maluach was a consensus top pick. And the Nets, as they love to do, they zag and they go with Yegor Dioman. When that pick and that name was read, just what was your initial reaction in your chest?
I mean, surprise for sure, right? Because so in the mock draft, I danced around the board to get back to, I think, 15 to get Demon. So it was still about making that move and still trying to get that player. So I like him as a prospect. Was it surprising that it's 8 and that's the selection? Sure. You mentioned Kaman being there. Going into it, I didn't think that was someone that was going to necessarily be on the Nets radar. It's not for, not understand the skill set or liking the prospect. But really at that point, Jeremiah Fears goes, right? Trey Johnson goes. These are the kind of conversations as you're building up to the draft. If one of those players gets there, I think either one of them, if they're there at 8, the Brooklyn Nets are, I think, ecstatic to take one of them. And we discussed Fears kind of at length and the skill set, the size, all those things. After that, though, I mean, listen, we talked about it with Cedric Howard going 11 to Portland. I was a big fan of his. And then ironically, the Drake Powell maybe kind of checks some of those trait boxes that you like so much about him. There's an uncertainty there as well. I mean, after the fact, when you walk through it, outside of saying they should have taken Noah Asenge, because that was the guy we talked about so much, there's not a lot of other names after taking a Doman there that I would have said, oh, that's the guy I would have taken instead. I know it feels like a zag, as you said. The Nets liked him. They took him there. I can't make a case for maybe more than 2 other players that I would have put at that point at 8 that I would have taken instead of him. So I end up liking the pick, even if in the moment you go, oh, okay, let's recalibrate. What do we think about the prospect? Where do we think the value is? What do we think it can be at the NBA level?
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of shock just based on where the consensus was of where he was going to land in the draft. But something that I've heard from a lot of people around the NBA, and it's been reported by other people, is that there were people who were picking close to after the Nets who liked Dioman and had him in that range. So he, people are like, oh, could they have gotten him at 19? Because some people mocked them to him at 19. It's like, he wasn't getting to 19 from things that I've heard. So,
and that's another part of it, right? Like understanding if you can't make the moves around the board, like people wanted you to, if you're going to pick at 8 and the next pick's at 19 and you want this kid, like there you are, right? And if there isn't a chance to trade back and all that other stuff, the risk reward of missing out on a player that you really think you can develop into something, concrete cornerstone for the franchise.
Yeah. And I think it was a recalibration. I think that's a good word to use, because after Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears go off the board at 6, 7, and then you're at 8. The thing that Nets fans have been clamoring about the whole time with this pick is upside, upside, upside. We have to go for upside. And you might not agree that Dioman has the kind of upside that you wanted, but if you look at the options there, who were the guys? Like we said, it was Asenge was a guy who you could say was an upside swing. Maluach, some people don't think so. I think he has some upside, but he could have been an upside swing. But it seems like they probably wanted to go ball handler more. After that, we're talking about, Kasparas Yakachonis, who fell to 20. Yep. So that doesn't seem like that would have been a good pick based on how far and how many teams passed on him. Like Derek Queen are you talking about? A guy a lot of people have, concerns about. So maybe were they going to go Carter Bryant or Cedric Howard at 8? I think people would have flipped out if they did that. So, the upside case with Dioman, I understand it. I'm a little worried about whether there is a true upside there because some of the ball handling limitations and some things along those lines. But I get it because, him being a guy who's 6'8", can dribble, pass, shoot, should hold up defensively. If he can improve on some of these things, there is an upside case there. And there's also a floor case there if he shoots the way that he did at Summer League, which was obviously a big concern. And the Nets have looked vindicated, with some of their assessment and confidence about him as a shooter. Going beyond Dioman, they took 2 more point guards, obviously, which a lot of people were scratching their heads about. And then they go with Powell and Wolf. Of those picks, was there one that surprised you the most? And which of those guys are you the most excited about coming out of Summer League?
Yeah, I mean, so Traore to me, not surprising. Likewise, as you get down into the 20s, Saraf is a guy that was connected to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, by the time you get there to make that pick, does it feel like, oh, you're now tripling down on that ball handling position? Honestly, so the Danny Wolf one to me is interesting, right? Because now when you look at the draft in totality, so even on Yegor, the one thing to note there is he even switched it from ball handler to playmaker, right? He made that little transition when he was interviewing at Summer League, and I believe you were asking those questions of him. I don't know if the Brooklyn Nets drafted him based on pure ball handling and development of his skill set so much as the sample we got, which is the shooting, and saying, and he also has good court vision. Yes, he can set up others. Yes, he can do some things on ball. But I actually think we're going to be talking more about how does he help open up the floor spacing for the guys running at the point, for the guys playing at that 2-guard spot. So when you get to Nolan Traore, he's the guy I think that got me the most buzz coming out of Summer League. I would have loved to have seen Drake Powell as well. But Traore, I got to tell you, man, yes, he's slight ankle, some ankle issues. You're like, okay, can he hold up? But the fact that he has that first step burst, that he can get out in the open court, that he has the vision, and frankly, even at Summer League level, you saw him going into the paint, taking contact, still finishing up over bigger bodies. Like, it's hard to project that from Europe or from the college level that you're going to be able to still do it. At least the first early sample size was, yes, he can go do that. Everybody that the Nets took needs to continue to develop their shot. But I like Traore, and I think we're going to see, he to me has the best early chance, because he'll be on ball a lot, to get the fan base excited, to give you some of those, flashy moments, especially when he's creating for himself, especially in open court transition basketball. This is not going to be a high defensive team. So seeing him get out with that ball in his hands, I think is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then, listen, going back down it, I like Danny Wolf. I got to tell you, Summer League gets me a lot closer to how Doug looked at him as, I don't know, is anything really impressive about his game, right? A little slow, little, sluggish. Some of the passing decisions were just kind of upsetting for what you think the skill set is. I would have liked the Nets to go with a bigger body there. I talk about Maxime Renaud. That would have been one, and he had a nice Summer League for himself. I maybe would have liked some of the larger body floor spacing defensive value at that spot, because I think that's the one thing they lack here, right? Danny Wolf's going to struggle in switching defense. He's not going to get on the perimeter successfully. It doesn't look like. He's going to struggle from a size standpoint in and around the basket. So the Nets are still small. But I like Traore a lot. I think he's probably the first guy that I watch coming out. And Drake Powell is the low key, hey, what do we like to see in terms of his skill set? Because he has that length, ball handling, nice 3-and-D kind of model. I am excited to see him play as well going into training camp and into the season.
All right, we got some more draft thoughts. We also have a lot of trades we got to talk about. Then we have some predictions for the Nets this coming season. We'll touch on all that when we close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Closing out today's Locked On Nets episode with former host Adam Armbrecht rejoining the show. Yeah, I just want to close out the draft talk. You talked about Troy being the guy who might give, Nets fans the most exciting moments this coming season. And I think that could be true because, you look at Dioman and the things that he can do. If he can improve the ball handling and stuff, there could be some flashy moments. But with him, at least in Summer League, it was a lot more off-ball stuff. It was a lot more floor spacing. And I think that utility ultimately is something that attracted the Nets to him. And I think he can definitely get there in the other areas. But this coming season, people have him penciled in as the point guard on the depth chart. And right now, I'm just not sure that he's going to be able to handle the ball pressure as a starting point guard against NBA-level point-of-attack defenders. We saw him struggle with it at BYU. We saw him struggle with it at Summer League. Maybe he can make quick improvements in that area and acclimate himself, but it's tough. That's rookie ball handlers struggle a lot. And if you're a guy who's 6'8", has a little bit of a high dribble, don't have much shake, that might be difficult. So that could give Traore an opportunity to potentially slide in as more of the primary ball handler. And I think that would gives Nets fans some exciting moments just because of the speed, the skill set, the passing feel, some of those things. He's going to have to improve as a shooter. The finishing is going to have to come along, but I think there will be a lot of exciting moments with him just because of the skill set that he has. Outside of the draft, we also had a clear trade strategy with the Nets utilizing their cap space, a return from Sean Marks to, an old play in the playbook with the salary dumps. And he obviously gets the number 22 pick in the draft, which is Drake Powell, for taking on Terrence Mann's contract. And then he sends out Cam Johnson and takes on MPJ's contract and the unprotected 2032 first-round pick. Let's start with the CJ trade and focus on that because it was obviously the more significant move. I'm sure you guys talked a lot on the podcast about Cam Johnson trades for well over a year and the possibilities of what could happen there. When it ended up being that, and they take MPJ and they get that 2032 pick, what were your impressions of the deal that they got in the return?
Yeah, I think you had to get it done at some point, right? I mean, it had been a season and a half, 2 seasons of us saying, you need to make this deal. And I think when we were leading up to the draft, we were having those conversations about the roster, what has to happen, what makes the most sense. And it's not like this is going out on a limb. You needed to move, Cam Johnson because the value, because the roster. Now, oddly enough, I didn't paint this picture where it was taking on that size of a contract in Michael Porter Jr., getting the 2032. I love that pick, right? Now, again, you're betting on the what if, but it's not like the Denver Nuggets are an automatic to figure out what the next chapter looks like beyond the Joker, right? So taking a flyer on a pick like that is great. And then I don't know if you would agree or not, but Michael Porter Jr., it's tricky in the new NBA landscape, the contracts, the money. But I'm not wholly convinced that Michael Porter Jr. won't still be a player that potentially another team will call about. It may be that Sean Marks took on that money just to be able to have a team that has another big contract that they don't want, doesn't fit, right? Need to get a little bit younger, maybe whatever the push is. And you flip that once again and you grab some more additional draft capital. The other side of it is I think there's value in having a veteran player. You need this ball to move. I know a lot of fans, and I want them to develop the young guys, but there's a need for having experienced NBA players so that the offense can run effective sets, right? So that the team can develop these guys without it being some of what we saw at Summer League, right? Ball getting stopped a lot of passes flying around the court, out of bounds, turnovers, etc. So continuity matters. I thought that was great. From a first standpoint, I thought it was great. I think it's great for Cam Johnson as well because he's going to get to go and compete at a championship level. And I think his fit there in Denver is going to really benefit what they want to do overall. And they reshape themselves a little bit. Important for the Nets to get some size back in this as well because they are still a small roster.
Yeah, I haven't really wavered that I thought it was a good deal for the Nets. I think that 2032 unprotected first round pick is better. That's a better asset than I thought they were going to get back in a CJ trade. And the reason they did obviously was because they also took on MPJ's contract. And I think some people, like we did an episode about Bill Simmons, he called this the worst trade of the last decade or something like that, which I think's a little harsh to say the least. I outlined it on that pod, but he thought,
I don't want to say Bill enjoyed himself some hyperbole, but it does feel
from time to time. But he thought that the Nets should have gotten 2 assets, one for taking on MPJ and one for Cam Johnson. And I would say, what I said in response to that was, you could get 2 assets, but that unprotected 2032 first round pick, that's 2 first round picks, in equivalence to ones that are not of as such great value. So I thought the people who were asking and expecting to get 2 first round picks for Cam Johnson, maybe they could have, but maybe they could have gotten these late, swaps on swaps or highly protected picks that are going to be late picks. That pick is a pick that you don't know, but there's a realistic possibility that could be a top 5 pick. We have no idea. So you have some upside there. And then also I've said that, I think the pendulum swung kind of far on who Cam Johnson is versus who Michael Porter Jr. is. I think Cam Johnson is better and fits the Nuggets better moving forward, but they're definitely a similar tier of player in my opinion. And people are like, okay, well, Michael Porter Jr. has this obscene contract. And it's like, it's for the next 2 seasons. And where are the Nets the next 2 seasons? It's whatever. Honestly, maybe they could flip it. Maybe there's a team he rehabilitates its value and there's a team who wants him, or maybe he's just a filler, in a star trade, because we saw it doesn't always need to be the best player. Jalen Green just got sent out as the main filler. A lot of people aren't too high on Jalen Green. And if not, he's also a guy that he's young enough. He's 2 years younger than CJ, where they could extend him at the end of this contract at a more reasonable number. So the way I was kind of looking at it is they got the unprotected 2032 first round pick, which is a great asset. And then they got a player who's in CJ's tier, who is 2 years younger, so could fit the timeline, and they're really no worse off for wear because of the contract.
That last thing you mentioned there is important because we always talked about when everyone was bringing about Giannis this off season, the Nets, they should go all in, start trading the picks. And we always talked about how, but they'd say you get for money, even you have to put in Cam Johnson to fill it, but that's the guy you would want to have there. So having a player like MPJ, like you said, over the next 2 years, if the Nets end up getting back into those kind of conversations, you can look at your roster and say, we still do have this piece, and that gives you one more building block along with someone else you're going to bring in at that superstar caliber. So you can, feather a little bit of two avenues here, even if the fan base kind of hates when Sean Marks does that.
Yeah, and we'll close out this episode with this. We'll get some predictions at the very end, but has it been weird because, the whole time that you guys did the podcast, it was really like the win now Nets. Like they made these win now moves and they were going in for it. And now they've finally committed, it seems like, to this full rebuild and building through the draft. Has it been weird to see them kind of start this journey, a journey that some people may have wanted them to take earlier, but they never really did it while you were hosting the show. And they haven't done it since they've been in Brooklyn, really.
Yes, because as things started to unravel around the Kevin Durant, the Kyrie Irving, even the James Harden, right? You make that trade, the Ben Simmons. Okay, that's like the first thing. So it's not going to be that anymore. It's not going to be one of the most potent offenses over a very small 15-game sample size. Okay, what's it going to be? And Ben Simmons doesn't work out. And so already at that point, right, we all know like the rumblings, the conjecture, well, what's the answer here? What do you try to do? So there was this real slow bleed to it. And then you get to the phase of, okay, Kyrie Irving, and now we're going to move on from him. And then you get to the Kevin Durant, right? So it keeps petering down. And you could make the case the Nets could have done this in the Kevin Durant trade when you get Mikal Bridges and you get Cam Johnson, flip immediately, right? Send them out the door immediately, start that rebuild right then in that moment. However, this is the case for why it feels funny, but patience kind of matters in the way you evaluate things. The haul the Nets got for Mikal Bridges is pretty critical in launching this rebuild. So while it was surprising to see they finally did it, but it does line up with Joe Tsai, Sean Marks, his job security, and this sense of like, we don't need to rush. And I know fans hate that. And I get it. But it's like, we don't need to rush into our decisions. And by the way, in that time frame, you also found Jordi Fernandez and you identified who you think is your franchise head coach now. So you allowed things to gradually line up, continue to find value for the assets you had. And now we'll see, right? Like now this next season and a half, 2 seasons is going to determine whether or not the fans should be excited or if we really are a franchise that is far more in those buckets of that lower tier, perpetually terrible organizations around the NBA. Detroit lived there for a long time. Now they've climbed out of it. Can the Nets do the same thing? That's what's exciting.
And closing out the show, last thing, this coming season, I mean, I'm sure we'll have more talk with you, but just predictions. I think we all know the direction it's heading, but just what are your overall predictions on where this roster lands? And also just what are the top things that you're going to be watching out for that you want to see, I would assume, stemming from this draft class that they brought in?
Yeah, I'm very curious where everybody is, right? Who's starting in the G League potentially? We've heard about Saraf. Is that going to be a Euro stash situation? It doesn't seem like early flash there in his first sample at Summer League, and kind of leveled back out to where you thought. So I'm watching for how Traore looks, how Jaeger looks, certainly getting Drake Powell out there. I want to see the development. I mean, listen, it's going to be painful, but you got to think about what do they look like in week 1 season versus what they look like in week 20 of the season, right? Progressive development matters. Cam Thomas, what's going on? Does this franchise like him? Mm-hmm. We think they do. I saw a video of them applauding when they drafted him, but I'm not entirely sure. Watching that, Terrence Mann, that's another opportunity. That contract is nice. I think he could have potential, trade value at the deadline. So it's going to be a lot of those familiar things that we talk about in terms of shifting from the roster perspective. But I think I just want to have conviction that Jordi Fernandez is continuing that developmental track we believe in, and then getting some of these boxes checked. And oh, by the way, yes, from the draft class, but don't forget about Noah Clowney. It's like, it's really easy to jump past him. He's a part of this young core. You talk about Tariq Whitehead, like that last little sample at the end of last year. If you can build that out, the last thing I'll say is those 5 picks, they're not all going to be starters. That's not how back-end first-round picks develop, but can they be rotation pieces? So identifying what the roles long-term for some of these guys are going to be is going to matter more than whether or not they're getting a ton of starts this year, and sometimes it looks painful, because guess what? it's going to look painful for stretches for sure.
Adam, I'm sure all the Locked On Nets listeners are very happy to have you back on the show. I said when you guys welcomed me on that it wasn't a goodbye, it was a see you later, and I think that still applies here. Definitely try to circle back, have you on for some more thoughts down the line. But I really appreciate it, man. And keep enjoying that bocce, those disc golf moments. Go have yourself a ball, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
It legitimately sounds like I've retired to Boca Raton, and I'll take a flight when I can. No, man, I appreciate it. It's always awesome. Obviously, I'm glad that everyone's been supporting the show. I've seen the way it continues to grow. So we knew it was in good hands when we gave it to you, and the proof is in the podcast. So awesome beyond, man, and we'll certainly circle up again.
That does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets. Hope you guys enjoyed getting to hear from Adam again on everything having to do with the Nets offseason. I know he had some takes that he really wanted to get out, and I'm sure we'll circle back and have him on the show more moving forward. But if you do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, smash that like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about my takes, Adam takes, and anything relating to the Nets offseason. We got plenty more to discuss this offseason, and I will break it all down here on Locked On Nets when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.